All right, what's up, guys? Jeff Kamke here with Wealth Energetics. I am back with Matt Teuchel from Millennial Wealth Creator. We're going to do some more content. Glad you're with me today, Matt.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Love doing content together. Today, we're going to talk about some of the things that we come across when we're working with clients, just some of the typical stuff that we see clients are dealing with, or clients are thinking a certain way that, can be kind of an issue with what we're trying to accomplish with wealth strategies, where just things that get in their way as a client, things that just aren't working good. Some of the common maybe money beliefs, some of the things that clients are always doing with their money that doesn't quite add up, doesn't quite, make a whole lot of sense when you're looking at it from a different perspective. But it's the things that we're trained to do, and we don't question those things. So we're going to dive into some of those top things that we see when we're working with clients. So I'll let you go first, Matt. I know we were talking before we went live. You got some good stuff to bring up. I'm going to bring up a few good points here. So I'll turn it over to you. What are some of the things that you see, in
I
your
think,
experience?
yeah, one of the biggest things I notice, and maybe I notice it's one of the biggest things I notice because I can relate to it so much. It was a part of my journey when I started going down the path of learning about infinite banking, whole life insurance, and just, good places to put my money to work that were outside of the conventional system, I guess, and conventional things that were taught. It's getting over the conditioning that we have been that's just been kind of forced upon us throughout most of our life. And a lot of the things, just when I look back on it, I reflect and I look at where I'm at now, what I'm doing with, my finances and how I'm building wealth versus what I was taught is just like the complete opposite of what I was taught. And what we're normally taught is to just kind of play it safe. And when I say that, I'm not judging it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like there are some strategies where, for some people, playing it safe is going to be best for them. And that's totally fine. It's kind of like, in my opinion, I think starting a business, a side hustle, starting a YouTube channel, some type of content channel, just sharing your journey. I don't care what you do in your life, is just like start sharing your journey. I think that's one of the best things that people can do. But it's certainly not for everybody. And I think it's the same thing with personal finances and how we build our wealth and how we, like what we decide to do with our money to accomplish our specific goals. It's all very specific to our situation. But what I've noticed though is as I have more conversations with people, it's really getting over the conditioning that has been forced upon us for so long. A perfect example. I mean, it's no secret that you and I are very big fans of custom design, dividend paying whole life insurance. I'm a huge fan of the infinite banking concept, even though it's not right for everybody. But in my personal experience, it is a fantastic strategy. But in order to actually implement it correctly and even determine if it's something that's good for you, there's a lot of mental, like financial paradigm shifts that you have to have mentally in order for something like infinite banking to even really make sense. And something like infinite banking and using custom designed dividend paying whole life insurance, it goes against so much of what we're taught, right? That even though it could potentially be a really powerful strategy for somebody, whole life insurance being a really powerful asset in their lives, if you can't get past the conditioning and have those paradigm shifts about just thinking about different places, a different way to store capital, for example, a different way to save money, a different way to build an emergency fund, right? Things like that. If you can't get past that conditioning and start asking those questions and really doing that research, then you're kind of stuck in that paradigm that we're taught throughout our entire lives about save money in the bank. Max out your 401k, rely on the stock market to build your wealth. Maybe you'll be wealthy in 30, 40 years. People use 529 plans for college, for example. Well, hopefully over the next 10 years, the stock market's going to perform so that you can send your kid to college. Like those are it's just traditional financial wisdom, things that we're taught, but are those things actually the best things for us? Like, is that the best way for us to accomplish our goals? In my experience, it's absolutely just a resounding no. Not that it wouldn't work for some people in some situations, but when you start to have those paradigm shifts, man, everything changes. You start questioning everything and you start to realize that there's a much better way, a much more efficient way of doing things, saving money, building an emergency fund, growing wealth, things like that, taking back the banking functions in our lives, right? Recapturing so much wealth and putting that wealth back into our personal economy as opposed to giving it to the system and banks and stuff like that, right? And so for me, that's what I would start with. The biggest thing that I've noticed, the biggest hurdle that people have to get over is these paradigm shifts and questioning the things that we've been taught for our entire lives. So I'll end it with there. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, it's something that I've had to overcome in my life too. I mean, when you started getting into anything related to money, once you're old enough to make money and you start thinking about like, well, what can I do with this money? Well, I remember early on in my schooling, you know, it's probably even elementary school, like one of the local credit unions came in, opened up little checking accounts for all the students, right? And so you just like are ingrained from literally elementary school on that you go to the bank for everything. So anytime you have money, you don't keep it, you take it to the bank. Every time you need money, you go to the bank to get it
Right.
out of your account. If you need to buy a home, you need to buy your first car, you need to go to college. Oh, wow, there's no other strategy on planet Earth, Matt. You have to go to the bank. So you get into this ingrained habit that the bank is where everything related to money is at, and you never are taught to think outside of that box. That
Right.
what else should I do with the basics of my life, my checking and my savings, and are those the best places to store capital? Most people have never even thought about asking that question. Should I store my extra capital in a savings account? You ask 1,000 people that, you'll probably get 999 answers that say yes.
Yep.
But there's potentially other places to store capital. Now, your immediate liquid savings probably still best in a bank, but there's other places you could store money. It could be stored in cryptocurrencies. It could be stored in gold. We would say probably a good idea to have some of that stored in cash value life insurance, where you've got it there and it's doing multiple functions for you. But if you've never even thought to answer that or to ask that question, you're probably going to never look at all the options and compare pros and cons of all those to arrive at the right thing that's going to be best for your financial situation. And then you extrapolate that out beyond savings. Then it's okay, I've got a job now. What do I do with this money to invest for retirement? Am I saving for retirement or am I investing for retirement? Well, most people say you're saving for retirement, but they're using an investment vehicle, a 401k
Right.
or an IRA. Well, are you ready to be investing yet? Maybe you're not. Most people start investing before they have a financial foundation in order. Something
Yep.
we're taught at Life 180 and we help our clients with is a hierarchy of financial needs, and essentially where, in the bottom is how are you on your cash flow? How are you on your debt management? Do you have credit cards? Do you have a lot of loans? Where are you at on all that stuff? Are you bringing in enough money? Are you net positive every month? Are you net negative every month? And so there's all these things that we're just taught from little up, and we never think about maybe I should do something before I start investing in my 401k or my IRA. Maybe there's steps that should come before that. They're going to set me up for a better financial future into the rest of my life. And I agree. If we
100%.
don't ever ask those questions, we will never arrive at a better solution. We're just going to continue to repeat what we've been taught, what we've been, you can even say brainwashed to believe in a sense, because sometimes when we actually get down, I know I've done this myself, like, why do I believe I should do this with my money? Why do I believe I should invest this? Well, if you think about it, it's like, well, that's all I've ever heard. That's what the media says. It's what all the books say. It's what all the gurus say. It's what my teachers say. It's what my professors told me in college. Like, it's what everybody's doing. So obviously that's got to be the right path to take. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe they're all just following the herd of sheep, and nobody in that herd has ever stopped to question, why are we doing what we're doing? And when you
Right.
do that, you can usually come up with something deeper that maybe you would still arrive at the conclusion that the sheep are going is the conclusion and direction I should go. You might arrive at that, but you
Yep.
might open your mind up to something that's beyond that, that
Right.
can actually be more efficient for you, help you be more secure financially, help you actually build a better, you know, future financially. There's just all these considerations that come up. So yeah, I totally agree, man. Like it's one of those
I
things
think.
that it's almost, and it happens not just in finance, of course, it happens all over the board and health and all
Right.
these areas of our life, relationships, that there's all these things that we just accept as truths and we just never challenge them.
I think that's one of the most powerful questions that we can ask ourselves is why am I doing this? Why am
Hmm.
I doing what I'm doing right now? Is it because it's what everybody else is doing? It's the only thing I know. It's what I've been taught my entire life. I think that's a really, really powerful question to ask. And here's the consequence of not asking that question is by the time you might actually propose that question to yourself, it might be too late to do anything about it. Like people that, they're reaching retirement age or whatnot, and they're discovering that, holy crap, I don't have enough money for retirement. I actually have to go back into the workforce or come out of retirement because, the 401k or the stock market it didn't perform, or I wasn't able to save enough money to put into, these different vehicles. Like, well, if we asked different questions in the beginning, and that's where I think the system really fails us, is we're not taught how to ask really good questions that help us determine what is actually going to be best for us. Because, like you said, you might ask that question and go down this path and arrive to the same conclusion, or the conclusion that what you were doing and what you're currently doing is best for you. And that is totally fine. Like, if somebody wants to, I'm not a huge fan of 401ks and just really tax qualified plans in general, but that doesn't mean they're bad and that they wouldn't make sense for people. It's just the problem that people like you and I typically have with those things, that people are doing it just because that's what they were taught to do. They were told to do. It's like the normal thing to do, right? It's what everybody does. They put money into a 401k. But here's the thing, is this is what happened with my journey, is when I started asking those questions, I realized that, holy crap, there is a far better way for me to build wealth, in a far better, like, more efficient way to store capital and things like that. And that led me to the infinite banking concept and dividend paying whole life insurance, private money lending, and all this stuff. I would have never thought about doing that kind of stuff if I didn't ask those questions. Why am I doing this? Or is there a better way to build wealth? And, like, just start questioning things, guys, because if you don't, and you do it too late, you might not be able to rectify the situation. You might end up at 67 years old and realize, holy crap, I probably should have done things a little bit differently. But now you don't have a lot of time to make up for the lost opportunity there. So yeah, I want to point out, I mean, I think that's a great question to ask, and it should be at the core of the decisions that we continue to make. Is, just let me take a step back. Why am I doing this? And is this the best thing for me right now? So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Good stuff.
Yeah, it makes me think, like, I thinking back on my journey a little bit more too. Like, I knew for me, when I got out of high school, I had like a friend of my dad's or somebody that was trying to pitch me a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, I mean, it was a Roth IRA, and was just selling me all these benefits. And it was just kind of like, nah, thanks for sharing, but just doesn't seem to, hit the spot with me. It just seemed kind of odd and kind of off. And I've had that with a lot of different things down through the years. And it wasn't until 2018, my first time I was at a conference learning about the infinite banking concept, that I was like, I knew something like this existed. Like, I just knew intuitively that had to be something better out there than all the traditional stuff. And I think the last time you and I did some content, I had shared my journey in health. Like, I had had acne really bad all through middle school, high school. And it wasn't until I got out of high school and was on my second failed round of Accutane that it's like, you know what, maybe there's something better out there for me. And I went through this exact process we're talking about with money, but I did it with health. And I came upon this whole new world that I didn't even know existed, of understanding at a deeper level how my body was functioning, why acne was there. It was because my liver wasn't cleansing everything efficiently enough. So the skin was like the backup organ. So I needed to clean up my diet. I did some herbal cleanses, and literally in like 2 weeks, all of the acne was gone. And that was like this profound thing for me of like, oh my gosh, there's different solutions out there. And so then when I heard infinite banking for the first time, it was like, this is just like what I found in health. Like, I knew it. I knew there was something else out there that was different, completely, like, you couldn't even like dream this up if you're just to try to come up and think about it. You have to be like educated by someone else for the light bulb to go on. Like, you couldn't dream of like, oh, I bet it's whole life. And I bet if you put extra money into a whole life policy, it would accomplish all these wonderful things. Like, you wouldn't ever go there logically. But then once you hear it, again, it's like pulling back the curtain of the great Oz. You're like, oh, there's like this secret money method out there that I knew must have existed, but none of the other things existed for me. So I think my point here is like, I think so many people have this hunch that the traditional stuff isn't probably the best thing. Like, there might be something better out there, but maybe they don't have the courage to buck the system. I know that's something that stands in a lot of people's way. Like, I just need to go with the flow. I'm not the disruptor. I'm not the person that's going to object to things. I'm just going to go along with what everybody says. I don't want to be that weirdo in my family. And so they just go along with everybody else, and they don't ever question things at the level to where they're willing to make a switch. And I think that's just so unfortunate when people, get to that point where they're almost like knowing they should do something, but they can't get themselves to do it when it has, I mean, really with money, you can you can course correct at some point along the way, but at some point you've gone far enough down the track, you're old enough, there's not time to recover. And if you time the markets bad, like, man, that's a really sucky feeling to know, like, man, I knew it 20 years ago. I probably should have looked elsewhere or asked the questions that Matt and Jeff are talking about right now, but I just didn't have the courage to do it. And so I encourage any of you, if you're watching this and hearing this, like, if you have a hunch that there's something different out there for you, like, listen to that. That's a voice that you don't want to ignore and shove down. And there's probably something beneficial on the other side of that gut feeling that you need to investigate and discover and see what path it leads you down.
Yeah, 100%. So what I would add to that is, I mean, here's the thing. This kind of leads to another obstacle that I notice is like people are resistant to learning new stuff sometimes where they don't want to put in the time and effort to learn something new. I don't want to become a professional investor and I don't want to be a professional this and that. I just want to do my job, make my money. Hopefully the money grows and then, I reach retirement and everything's good. I think it's a very dangerous way of going through life when it comes to personal finances. And I would say that, if I could be blunt here, we have an obligation to not just yourself, but your family as well, people that you care for and that care for you, to seek out the best opportunities possible to build and secure wealth. Wealth is a very important part of life. It's not the most important thing, but it certainly makes life a lot easier, a lot better. So when you have a good system in place that's in alignment with you and that has proven to work time and time and time again, as opposed to just being so fixated on rate of return and stock market volatility and I'm getting these tax deductions and stuff. Well, you're not actually saving money on taxes. You're just kicking the can down the road. You're compounding your tax problem, which, maybe for some people that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Most people I ask, if when I ask them like, hey, do you think taxes are going up in the future? It's like, well, yeah, of course they are. Like, look at the national debt. It's like, well, then why aren't you getting your taxes out of the way right now? I don't understand, right? So there's just like a lot of the times there's just this misalignment. And if we just took a little bit of time to educate ourselves, like, guys, it's not really complicated stuff. Like anything new that we start to pursue, then, there's going to be some discomfort. There's a learning curve and stuff like that. But it's not really hard to grasp this kind of stuff. And it can pay, for lack of better terms here, pun intended, dividends for life, literally. And, like I mentioned earlier about how what we're taught traditionally when it comes to personal finances, get the job, you're going to rack up student debt, whatever, buy the home, have the kids, start the family, max out the 401k, right? That's really the big part when it comes to personal finance. And we oftentimes will consider that to be playing it safe. I would actually argue that you're kind of gambling with your financial future at that point because you don't know what the stock market's going to do. You don't know what taxes are going to be. Are you even contributing enough to your 401k to really get the benefit? What about the fees? Are you paying attention to that? Fees can eat away up to half of your 401k value over your lifetime. Like, are you paying attention to any of that? And if you're not and you think you're playing it safe, you might not be. And like we mentioned, it might be too late to do anything about it before you realize there's a problem. Versus with dividend paying whole life insurance, one of the things I think about with regards to this is if you really did want to play it safe, I would argue custom design dividend paying whole life is the best way to play it safe because it's the safest asset that we can own. It's guaranteed to grow every single year. Plus you get dividends. These companies have never missed a dividend payment. You get all kinds of tax advantages. You literally buy a massive amount of net worth. So your family's protected. You have your legacy play that gets passed on income tax free. You have long-term care protection. So like, if we're going to play it safe, why not have an asset that solves so many problems? And yeah, is it going to get 20% rates of return in 1 year? No. But it's going to get that slow, steady 3, 4, maybe 5% tax-free, uninterrupted compound growth for the rest of our lives. And it's just, if you're going to save money, why not save it in the most efficient way possible? And if you want to take chances in the market, go for it. But I would argue, like, I don't know that there's a better way to play it safe than whole life insurance. But again, it all comes back to asking those questions and then educating yourself about how these things actually work. Not what your favorite financial entertainer guru, whatever, tells you how it works. Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey, whatever. Taking a little bit of time. I guess I would ask this, Jeff, is our financial future worth, let's call it 30 days of educating ourselves about a different way of doing things with our money? Like is our financial future worth taking a little bit of time to study these things, figure out if it's worth it? I would say yes. So, and end of that part of the rant. So I'll hand it back to you, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. No, all good stuff, man. I mean, it leads right into my next point of doing things safe versus risky. And what we're taught to do with investing, and I've kind of already alluded to this, but I'll expand on it, is we talked about that hierarchy, that pyramid that, we see it in the food pyramid, right? Our foundation is built on grains, right? Where it's like, what's really opposite, because fruits and vegetables are at the top, and we really should probably be fruits and vegetables at the bottom with some meats and eggs in there. And, we have this inverted diet, and we wonder why in the nation that we're in, excuse me, that, we're really obese and really unhealthy, and, all these cancers and all this stuff is through the roof. It's like, well, maybe we're doing things opposite. Well, then when we look at, are most people thriving financially? Probably not. Now, there's a lot of factors that play into this. Part of it is just the American programming around money and debt and consumerism and have all this stuff, right? That's part of it, obviously. But part of it is the pyramid that we're following financially is inverted as well. Investing should be at the top of the pyramid. It should be done as the last step in your wealth building process. Maybe second to last as far as like legacy and trusts and things like that. If you have a lot of assets to worry about, that's probably the very, very top. But you should have a solid foundation. Some people have an income problem. They're
Mhm.
not making enough money. They're withholding their skills, their value from the marketplace or from their job. They're afraid to step out. They're afraid to make a bigger impact, which correlates to more income. I go through these layers myself. I have for many years of extending my income, growing myself, realizing I have great value to give to other people and not stepping into that fully. And my income reflected that. I wasn't making enough money. But the more I step into my greatness, my bank account is directly, correlated with that, because when you give value, value is received. I mean, it's just a law of reciprocity. There we go.
Reciprocity. Yep.
Big word. That's just a universal law that we deal with. So, some people need to start there. They have an income problem. And then if you get the income problem figured out, you're making enough money. Some people have a debt problem. They have a spending problem. So those things need to get handled. And the reason we say that is because we come across people, Matt, that they're putting all kinds of their extra money into their 401k to try to get that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, whatever the number is this month that they're saying you get in the market. They're doing that, but then they're paying 18, 25, 30% on their credit cards. And it's like, but you're not putting your extra money towards the thing that's eroding your money. You're trying to grow your money faster at a lower percentage,
Right.
6% in your 401k, than you are paying 25% in your credit cards. So you got to get the credit cards handled, because here's the thing. If you got rid of your 25% credit cards, that's like a 25% rate of return.
Right.
And actually
It's
more than that, when you do the calculation over many years and think about volume of interest, it's much more than
yep.
25%. It could be 200 or 300% sometimes.
Yep.
But if we don't tackle that part first, we shouldn't be investing. Now, it doesn't mean, and this isn't like everybody follow this. This isn't our financial advice for everyone. This is a concept of thinking about, where's my money going? Am I growing my money more or eroding my money more? If I'm earning 6% and paying 20% in interest, mathematically that might not make sense for your situation. Now, for some people, they still might want to be doing a little bit of both, but their extra go towards the debt. Again, not one size fits all advice, but it's questioning what we're doing with our money and making sure we have a solid foundation. And then usually from the income, the debt, then we go into, okay, now let's look at the protection part of our life. Are we protected in the ways that we need to with the right insurances? And this is where life insurance comes in. And it might just be term insurance at this point. It might not even be talking about infinite banking and dividend paying cash value life insurance. It might not even be at that point yet. But if you got hit by a car tomorrow morning on your way to work and you were dead, what would that mean for the rest of your family for the next 10 years? If you don't have that box checked, maybe we shouldn't be so focused on all the investing that comes next, right?
Right.
Maybe we shouldn't be doing that first. So those are the things that I see a lot with clients, is doing things out of order or not
Yep.
having the right things in place first, maybe because it's not as sexy or it's not as lucrative, or you can't brag about your, big 20% growth this year in your S&P 500 index fund, but really challenging what you're doing, why you're doing it, what order should you be doing it in, to play it much more safely so you can build on a good foundation, having an emergency fund, having an opportunity fund, doing all those things. And then once you have like a good opportunity fund, you got maybe 6 months minimum of expenses put away, then you can maybe start swinging for the fences and think about, okay, now it's time to invest. But if we invest first, if we invert the pyramid, right? We got our whole pyramid on this little point. It doesn't take a whole lot for that pyramid to tip over and everything to fall apart. Now, the tipping over could be you lose your job. The tipping over could be the markets crash by 30 or 40%. There's a lot of things that can happen that can really disrupt the stability of our financial life. And if we're waiting on that nest egg or praying on that nest egg to be there in retirement, and that's when the markets drop 30, 40%, and we're still supported on an inverted pyramid because we've put all of our eggs into the investment bucket, and something happens, that can really mean a devastating retirement. There's a lot of people that have to go be a greeter at Walmart again because they didn't have good education and a good financial structure. So I'll leave it open for some comments back on that, but that's one of the things that I see, so often.
It's massive. I think the pyramid analogy is perfect for it. It's just like the food pyramid where everything is really backwards. It's the same thing with personal finances. I talk about this on my channel quite a bit. I talk about it a lot as I've put together what I'm calling my Millennial Wealth Creator Blueprint, where it takes what we're taught, which is like what we're taught is literally putting the cart before the horse, where we get the job and we put a little bit of money into our 401k and these tax qualified plans, and hopefully that's going to build wealth for us. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, people are sadly disappointed, and then it's too late to do anything about it. And as I researched this stuff more, what I found was, like, again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the 401k, but the reason that so many people are not actually really benefiting from it is they can't contribute enough. Well, why can't they? Like when you look at the number of millionaires, like 401k millionaires, the majority of them reach that point not because the stock market did something amazing. I mean, we've been in a great bull run, but nobody knows what the market's going to do over the next 10 years. How do you know we're not going to enter another lost decade like we did from 2000 to 2010, right? How do you know that's not going to happen? Right. So, but when you look at the success of people that people have had with 401ks, it always comes down to making sure they're able to contribute enough. They're actually maxing out that 401k. That's what actually makes the big difference. The question becomes, why aren't people able to contribute more? Well, one of the things you mentioned was credit card debt is out of control. People don't have control of their debt. And what's interesting is that, so a lot of the times people treat credit cards like an emergency fund, right? Why are we doing that though? Well, it's because we're putting the cart before the horse. We haven't put a really good financial foundation in place so that when something happens, then we have to tap credit cards at 25, 30% interest, as opposed to maybe tapping something like a dividend paying whole life insurance that serves as just a phenomenal emergency fund. Great competitive interest rates. It's simple interest as well. You have flexible payments and all that stuff. Plus your money's growing at the same time. But it's like we're not taught to put that foundation in place. And then here's the other part of it, of putting the cart before the horse. We're not taught to max out our income. So what we're taught to rely on these financial tools to build our wealth for us, as opposed to us being our greatest assets and building wealth that way. So my question to people is, well, why do we want to wait 30, 40 years to become a millionaire on paper? Why don't we just learn how to become a millionaire now? And when I say millionaire, I mean, that is very subjective. I'm not saying everybody has to become a millionaire. My point is, why are we waiting and trusting something to build wealth for us over such a long period of time when we have the ability to build massive wealth ourselves by the value that we provide to people? And it's a lot simpler than what people think. And again, going back to my blueprint, step one is always income. Step two is building the vault. That's your foundation. And step three, that's when we start really putting money to work, whether it's the stock market. I like Bitcoin. I like private money lending, right? You take your pick. But people are doing that kind of stuff first before they have their income figured out. And, they're putting $200-300 a month into their 401k. It's like, I mean, I suppose you could argue that's better than nothing, but I would argue that money is far better served investing back into yourself so that you can learn how to double your income, right? Get some continuing education, go to YouTube University. Like, you can learn anything that you want, learn how to increase your income so then you could put $2,000 a month into your 401k. Now we're talking about moving the needle here. But if you're putting just a couple $100 a month into these things, it's not going to make a significant difference in your life over the long run. What I can tell you personally that will is investing back in yourself, learning how to increase your income. Always increase your income as much as you can. Create passive income streams. Now you've got income coming in. You can make much more strategic financial moves that are far more in alignment with what you actually want to accomplish, right? Maybe it's funding a dividend paying whole life insurance policy. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is those tax qualified plans. I don't care. But you got to have your income right. Because if you don't have your income right, how are you able to put enough money into these things? And then if you lose that income, you don't have a good solid financial foundation. Now you have to tap into these various different things that you were investing into for the long run. Now you're interrupting the growth. The pyramid collapses at that point, right? We need to flip the script here. All right. No more putting the cart before the horse. Focus on the income. What can I do to make as much money as I possibly can with what I am really good at? Okay. Next step. All right. I've got money coming in. Where can I start to put this to create a foundation? Not take a massive amount of risk with it. Build the foundation first. It's going to get good, safe growth. I can tap into it as an emergency fund. It can serve as an opportunity fund as well. And then once I have my foundation in place, as my income continues to grow and continues to come in, now I can take more risk. Maybe I want to do Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, stock market, whatever, right? But it's just, man, I'll tell you, I sleep so much better at night doing it in that order because I got the income coming in, I have my foundation, I have my long-term investments, and I'm not worried about massive like economic crashes and all this stuff. It's like when you put that foundation in place, it feels like you're bulletproof almost. I mean, no one's really bulletproof financially, but you can weather the storm a lot better. You can make much better moves, right? So that's those are my thoughts on that. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, man, those are all good thoughts. I think you summarized all that stuff pretty well, just putting the cart before the horse. It happens so often with people. I think some of the things that you were talking about, some of the stuff I was talking about last too, makes me think of another, obstacle that people have is on the protection side. When we're talking about we've got our income figured out, we've got the debt under control, let's make sure we're covered. I hear it so often. People have a term life insurance policy. Maybe it's part of a group plan from work, right? An employer term life policy that they've got, 100,000, 250,000 of death benefit, and they think that that's like enough coverage. Now, how do you know it's enough coverage? Have you ever done any math associated with it? How did you arrive at 250,000 as the right number for you? That's
Right.
another one that I see very often that's not calculated. It's not an educated decision on like, I know that if I passed away tomorrow morning on my way to work, my family would receive this number because.
Right.
And what is that? What are all those factors? It's like, well, what is your income? Because I've talked to people, I've got a buddy of mine. He makes, I'm assuming probably close to $250,000 a year just by himself because he's works at the hospital at a pretty good paying job, well north of 100 grand, I guarantee that. He's got a $250,000 death benefit. Now I'm like, well, wait a minute, what is that going to cover for you? Your house is worth probably double or triple what your life insurance policy is. So are you going to pay off your home? Like if you passed away, do you want your home to be paid off for your wife and kids? Like a lot of people would want that. Okay, well, what's the value of that? Let's factor that into the decision. How much money are you making? Okay, I make 100 grand a year. Okay, great. How many years do you want income to be replaced so your wife doesn't have to worry about income? Like if she doesn't already work outside the home, or if she does, she could quit because life's chaos now. You've got kids at home, maybe they're little. The wife is, totally distraught. Her husband was killed, tragically. Maybe she wouldn't want to work for a few years. Could you provide that? Okay, well, maybe you want 5 years of buffer. So that's $500,000 right there. Do you have any debt? That's a big one that people kind of gloss over. Like, okay, I got 100 grand of student loans, but I've got $100,000 life insurance policy. Like, well, that just covers the debt. That didn't even put you in the ground.
Right.
So it's like, what is the calculation into why you have the death benefit you do? Maybe 250 is enough. Maybe it's not. But if you don't ever, and like back to our original points here, if you don't ask the questions, you will not know. And you need to work with somebody that can point these things out because there's things that don't maybe meet the eye when you're thinking about that. $250,000 sounds like a lot of money when you just talk about it. But when you break it down into covering debts, maybe paying off the home, making sure your income is replaced for a few years, making sure maybe you want your kids to be set up to go to college. Okay, well, what's that going to cost in 10 or 15 years? Factoring that in, a lot of times, Dave Ramsey says at the bare minimum, 10 to 12 times your annual income is what you want in a death benefit. So if you make 100 grand, you're wanting $1 million death benefit bare minimum. Now, there's other calculations that I think are much more accurate to go above and beyond that say 20, 25 times income when you're factoring all these different things in so that you're setting your family up, the next generation up for, a good, solid, excuse me, financial life. And, that's just, excuse me, I ate corn chips before we came in.
It's all good.
That's just something that, doesn't get enough thought. It doesn't get dissected enough and analyzed deeply enough to really understand, why do I have this amount? What is it going to do for me? Is it going to meet the goals and objectives I have if the worst happens? I want my family to be, in the best spot possible. And so is that death benefit going to be enough? So
Right.
any thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason that these life insurance companies approve you for 20 to 30 times your income in death benefit. Might want to ask the question why that is. Maybe because that is what you need. It's not like a set number. It's based on how much income you make. There's other factors involved, but that is a point worth noting. And actually wrote a quote here from a book that I read that I think ties perfectly into this. And he said, so this was the gentleman's name was Bob Shields, I think. He said, "I wish everyone could die once, just for a week, to see the problems they leave behind." Think about that,
Ooh, that's powerful.
right? Yeah, that one gave me chills a little bit the first time that I read it, and I think that's like if we could see the destruction that we leave in our wake, because when we pass, we don't. I mean, we're just gone, right? But there are loved ones that are left behind, and you have to ask yourself: do you have do you have enough in place to make sure they're cared for? Like, because oftentimes too, I think what happens is, like you alluded to this a little bit, where like we get hung up on the number. It sounds like $250,000. It sounds like a lot, but then when you start, calculating all of debts, liabilities, etc., you start to realize maybe it's not. But oftentimes we forget the emotional turmoil, the grief that the immediate loved ones feel, and how that's going to impact them for however long. I mean, everybody adjusts to it and deals with it differently, but the passing of a loved one is traumatic, right? So I think we have to take that into consideration when deciding how much of a death benefit do we need, or is my spouse going to have what they need in order to move on with their life and be happy again, and not be stressed about bills getting paid. What am I going to do with this? And what am I going to do with that? Right? It's, that's why like having life insurance is it's like the most selfless thing that you can do, because when it comes to the death benefit, you're not really going to benefit from it other than, living benefits, but that's a different conversation. We're talking about when you pass away. It's the most selfless thing that you can do, because you are making sure that the people in even organizations that you care about the most will benefit and I don't want to say benefit, but like just be able to recover from your passing and be able to continue on with life. And, our mentor, Chris Kirkpatrick, talks about this all the time, how it's a self-completing plan. What if you pass away halfway into what your plans are for building wealth for your family? What happens if you pass away halfway through it? Well, the beautiful thing about life insurance, permanent cash value life insurance, whole life, is that it's a self-completing plan, right? It allows you, and it gives you the opportunity to complete that plan financially even after you're gone, and have it provide for your family afterwards. So don't take the death benefit lightly, guys. I mean, the argument can be made that something is better than nothing, of course. But at the end of the day, like, especially as your income grows and stuff like that, I don't know that you can have enough death benefit, in my opinion. So it's just something to consider. Don't take it lightly. And if there's anywhere in your financial plan, I think that you should be asking that question, is like, why am I doing this? Is this enough? And like really evaluate it. It's going to be the life insurance for sure.
Yeah, totally agree, man. I mean, I think, one of the things that the life insurance companies will usually give is like that 20 to 30 year calculation of, if you make 100 grand and you're 40, or maybe 35, and you've got another 30 years of estimated working years left based on, what most normal people would do, then you want that income to be replaced the whole time, not just for a couple years just to get you by, but like literally, if you're not able to earn income for your family for the rest of your potential working years, you want the death benefit to be there to replace all that so that you can have what would be all of your contributions to a 401k for the next 30 years and all
Yep.
that compounding interest. You want to account for the rest of your life being, taken off the table because you're not here. So it's not just getting your spouse by for a year or two and then she's got to figure it out or he's got to figure it out. It's literally taking care of, like, assuming I work the rest of my years. And that's just if you worked a static job with very marginal pay increases. What if you're an entrepreneur like us? That I bet, Matt, in 10 years from now, and we're doing a YouTube, we might not even be doing a YouTube on Zoom. We might be in the Caribbean together, toasting each other on our successes because we just 10 extra income from a month before or a year before,
That's the
right?
plan.
We're going we're going to be increasing our income in a rate that is hard to calculate and hard to predict. So that's where, like, okay, how do you know how much money I'm going to produce? It's probably going to be every year or every few years is going to be more than the year or few before that. So that's a hard number to calculate. But just knowing that I'm going to be working for the next, I'm going to be 39 in a couple weeks. Like, I'll be working for the next 25, 30 years probably. I'd like to be retired in my 40s. So I don't have to work. I will always continue to work because I love serving people. I love what I'm doing. But if I knew that if something happened to me, all that potential money was given to my spouse at that moment and she was taken care of for the rest of her life. I know my kids' college education or apprenticeships or whatever path they go on, that those boxes are checked. Like, and I'm somewhat there. I mean, I've got a term policy that was taken out 6 months after we were married before I learned any of this stuff. I've got my, decently sized whole life policy. Both of those death benefits would at least get quite a ways down the road, at least probably 10 or 12 years down the road. That's
Yep.
good, you know, but it's not enough. And I need to be, adding more insurances the more that I go along because I want that protection for my family. And I think you brought up a couple great points. If you guys have watched any of the content we've done or anything on my channel, about a year ago, my dad passed. And I can say from firsthand experience, not even directly a spouse, but just a father, like, I know that my income dipped in 2024 because I wasn't myself. I
Yep.
wasn't at max capacity. I was scattered. I was emotional. I was stuck and stunned and like all these different emotions that, about Christmas time was when I finally felt like I've turned a corner and it wasn't like everything I thought of or saw like made me cry. It was like, okay, I've kind of accepted what is. I've moved beyond that. So I can only imagine when it becomes spouse time and you've lived with that person for a number of decades and all of a sudden they're gone the next morning. Like, especially if it's tragic. It's one thing if you kind of know it's coming, they've had cancer for
Right.
5 years or something, but if just all of a sudden, boom, car accident or something and they're gone, like the trauma of that.
Yep.
And you think, I'm just going to go back to work the next day or the next week or the next month. No, you are kidding yourself. And so
Yep.
having not only the protection in place so that they don't have to worry about working, but they also have how much counseling are they going to need for the next
Mhm.
5 or 10 years, maybe. Some people, it takes them a long time to get over this stuff. They need to go to counselors every single week to get over that. Well, how many thousands of dollars is counseling going to be if you factored that into the discussion? I mean, there's, like you said, there's so many little things that don't meet the eye. It's just, oh, it's just an income calculation, Matt. Nothing else to worry about. You'll be fine. You'll get over it. Like, no, this is real and it affects people massively. And so if you can be thinking about those things on the front end of like, if I had the opportunity to take care of, all the needs that are going to come up, not only financially, not only for my kids, but emotionally and spiritually and the processing of grief, like you mentioned. And like, I've thought through all that stuff. I mean, being the guy, like we have a responsibility as the husbands or the males in the relationship to be thinking about that stuff, to take care of our families in that way of like, you know what? I had enough forethought to know that if something happened to me tomorrow, I'm going to be able to fund 3 years of, psychology courses and mentorship and all that to work you through this stuff. Like that's all accounted for. I got you covered. Like that's the ultimate, taking care of your family at that level. So yeah, totally agree. I'll throw it back to you. If any other closing comments before we move on to the next thing, but
Yeah, just to kind of bring it full circle there, with regards to, death benefit. I mean, we've talked, a lot about the benefits of whole life insurance and how it serves as the foundation and not putting the cart before the horse and investing and all this stuff first. Like, when we're talking about the death benefit, what's great about when you put income first, you put your foundation in first, which whole life insurance, phenomenal financial foundation. And, I was talking earlier about how it serves as a great emergency fund, and you're going to get that steady, three to, depending on how you design it, but, steady 3 to 4% growth is actually a safe way to build wealth over the long run. And then if you want to take more risk, you can, right? So all those are great. But the other amazing benefit is that you get to do what we just discussed and have that self-completing plan that's going to provide for your family if something were to happen to you, tragically happen unexpectedly, and you pass away early. Like that's what I love about whole life insurance is it encompasses all of those things. It's literally there for us for our entire life. It's whole life. It's for our whole life. We don't even have to pay into it for our whole life, but it's going to be there throughout every major stage of our lives. And God forbid something tragic happens, it's going to protect our families, our loved ones, and give them what they need to continue moving on. Sometimes I get a little emotional about it when I think about the death benefit. I think about how much death benefit I have. And here's what's crazy. I don't even have kids, right? But I think about the relationship that I'm in, and we've talked about my lady and I. We've talked about how we want to get 10 to 15 acres at some point, and we call it just kind of having our own piece of paradise and things like that. We want to have horses and the chickens and just kind of away from the noise, and maybe still have a place on the beach or somewhere in the city that we go to, whatever. But that's our long-term goal. And I just when I actually think about it, I'm like, I actually sleep really good at night because I have this in place. But it's like that's a huge part of it is like I'm using my policies and it's accelerating the wealth building process, and it's great for infinite banking. But also, man, it feels really good knowing that if something were to happen to me, my lady would she would still be able to do everything that we've talked about doing, even if I'm not here. Do you know how freaking powerful that is and just how good that feels? Oh my gosh, man, it takes so much stress. It just lifts so much weight off of your shoulders knowing that your family is protected and the plans that you have can still be fulfilled, and even if you're not here, and that your loved ones will be able to get the help that they need to move on and live that life that you always talked about, right? So that's how I would wrap up, like, the whole life insurance, the benefits and the death benefit and all that. It's just such a beautiful asset, man. It really is. Like it gives us so much for like the same dollar solves so many problems, and it's a shame how ridiculed it is. And it's because it really is such an amazing asset, and people are just we're taught again to put money in the markets, in tax qualified plans and all this stuff, and we miss out on this amazing asset. And it's frustrating, it's sad, but that's why we do these interviews and podcasts. That's why we have our channels to spread the word. So that's how I bring it full circle there.
Yeah, yep, yeah, beautifully said, because it brings me right into the next point that I was going to bring up, which is kind of one point that it captures two other thoughts, is listening to the gurus. And we kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the conversation, but there's a lot of things. There's actually a book that David McKnight wrote, I think it came out in December, called The Guru Gap.
Yep.
And it talks about this specific thing, that when we're listening to the wrong people and we're trying to follow a guru's advice, and that guru's advice is really good until it's no longer good. Because I've had clients where they're at the stage of life, they're in retirement, they've done everything in the market, they've done everything by the book, they were just maybe not following the right book, because now there's gaps in the plan. And that's the guru gap. They were listening to their guru, even their local guru, their local financial advisor, their fiduciary. They were listening to that guru, and that you don't need life insurance. You don't need long-term care insurance. And the reason for that, Matt, is because you've been investing so much money in the market so diligently for the last 30 years of your working career. You've got this massive pile of money. And good news, it's going to solve all of your problems. It will serve as your long-term care. It's going to serve as your income in retirement. It's going to serve as your death benefit. It's going to serve as your legacy play. It's the ultimate one size fits all. It's going to do everything you need. It's the most efficient way to do it. Right. And that is one of the biggest things that I see, because when you then get with a client that's at that stage of life where they're dependent upon income and they've been practicing accumulation for 40 years, and now all of a sudden they have to change their habits and their thinking and their emotions to, wait a minute, I want to keep putting more money away. I don't want to touch my money because that's what I've been doing for 40 years. And now it's like, no, we need to turn on the faucet.
Hmm.
We've been filling the sink, we've been filling the bathtub. Now it's time to turn on the faucet. You need cash flow. We're going to produce cash flow. You get to actually enjoy your life now. And they're like, no, 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 I can't do that. And that's a big problem. Both of those are that we're relying on the market to solve all of our problems, but leaving gaps in our plan. And then we're not practicing what we need in retirement until we get to retirement. I mean, if you talk about any sport, golf, they're practicing the putts, they're practicing the drives. You talk about basketball, they're practicing free throws, they're doing that stuff. I mean, even the greats, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, they'd shoot 1,000 free throws every day at practice. Like, they're doing the thing that they're going to be doing all the time, but not in retirement, Matt. That's the only exception on planet Earth. You don't have to practice it. You can wait until you get into the game and then figure out how to swing the bat. It
Right.
doesn't make any sense, but that's what the gurus tell us we can do. Is you spend all of your life scrimping and sacrificing and delaying, put your money away, and then when it comes to retirement, we're going to give you the most inefficient vehicle for cash flow to give you your cash flow. But don't worry, because that most inefficient vehicle is also going to double as your long-term care. It's going to double as your death benefit, your legacy play, but it's all going to work out fine. Don't worry about a thing. And that is a major problem, because there's gaps in that plan that annuities, that whole life insurance can fill and make your investments much more efficient. Sometimes upwards of almost double the efficiency out of your investments when you have the tools that the guru is telling you you should not have, because they're a scam and they're just making an agent like us super wealthy with all of their outrageous fees and commissions. So all that stuff is so far from the truth. And that's where you have to, as we always say, ask the questions, do your research, because there's a lot of things with a traditional way of thinking about money that just don't add up.
Yeah, 100%. Well said. A couple things on that, particularly like regarding the gurus and stuff. Like, obviously, like when I think of Dave Ramsey, for example, he provides really good information when it comes to getting your life back on track. I would still do things a little bit differently, but he certainly provides a really good place to get started, getting your finances in order. But when it comes to investment advice, he's awful, in my opinion. And some of the things he says is just egregious. I don't even know how some of it's legal. There's 12% every year on mutual funds, so you can withdraw 8% from your portfolio. You ask any financial advisor that, like, hey, I heard that I'm going to make 12% and I could take out 8. They're going to look at you like you're freaking crazy, right? That's just not based on reality. But it comes back to asking questions. See, there's nothing wrong. Like, we need, I don't like really calling them gurus, like mentors and people that we learn from that know more than us, right? We need to learn, but we need to do that from a position of curiosity, not following this specific person just because they're popular, right? And assuming that everything that they say is correct or in your best interest, because oftentimes it's not. We say this all the time, Jeff, on our channels. Don't even take what we're saying at face value. We're just presenting ideas and what's working for us, different ways of thinking about things, so that you will go out, ask these questions, do your own research, and figure out what's best for you, right? We shouldn't be following any one particular mentor, guru, whatever. We take different pieces, right? And from each one of them, we start to put the puzzle together for our own personal finance. I'm going to take something from Dave Ramsey over here. I'm going to take something from Matt and Jeff over here. I'm going to take some from these, all these different places and mentors. And that's when you really start to come up with a plan that works for you. That's why, like what I do in my life right now with my finances, it's like it's perfect for me. But I took so many different things from so many people and customized and created my own plan, as opposed to just following one person and doing everything that they say. And like Dave Ramsey is a perfect example of this, because he hates whole life insurance. I don't know his stance on annuities. I'm pretty sure he's opposed to annuities. Is that correct, Jeff? I'm pretty sure he's opposed to that
same
too.
Story, all the fees and all that.
Well, right. That, and which is not true. If you're talking about variable annuities, then that's where the fees are. But a lot of annuities don't have some of them have no fees at all, right? And like when you hear that, and he probably wouldn't be for annuities because he truly believes for some reason that you're going to get 12% every year in the market and you could take out 8. So why would you use an annuity? But the problem is with that is that whole life insurance and annuities are phenomenal for retirement. And here's the argument is that, like a 401k, you were talking about this earlier, is people are taught the accumulation part of the game, right? 401k is a good accumulation vehicle. You have the tax, arguably the tax advantages is what we'll call it for now, right? Because you have your deductions when you put them in. All right, you have exposure to the market, which, historically speaking, if you put money in and you don't touch it over 30 years, you should be okay. All right, but then the question becomes, is the 401k the ideal distribution vehicle? Because there is a massive difference between playing offense and defense, all right? You can have phenomenal offensive line. You're playing football, right? But then if you take those star athletes on the offensive line and put them on the defensive line, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be an utter disaster because it's a completely different game at that point, right? So we have to realize that there's an accumulation phase and a distribution phase, and that there's specific vehicles that work very well in those different phases. 401ks, tax qualified plans, stock market, whatever, good for accumulation, horrible, absolutely horrible for distribution. What's good for distribution? Well, I can't think of anything better than annuities. When you set it up right, you do things correctly, you could create the same amount of income that you would from a 4% withdrawal rate with like half the money, maybe a little bit more. But my point is, you would be so much more efficient. And one of the things I did a video on this not too long ago is that if you were to realize that, like, you could get 7-8% withdrawal from, or like 7-8% income rate from an annuity versus a 4% withdrawal rate. Well, what you could do is whatever income you were going to create with that 4% rule, create that with the annuity, and then whatever's left over, you could just keep in the market, let it roll for another 5-10 years until you need a raise, and then do another annuity. Why do we do that? Because annuities are phenomenal at distribution. They're not very good accumulation vehicles. So when I see people selling like the upside potential, downside protection of the market, and which it can be okay for, it's just people have the wrong mindset around that. Is we're not using annuities to build wealth. Okay, we're using annuities for the income. We don't buy an annuity for what it might do. We buy an annuity for what it will do, what it's guaranteed to do, what it's best at, which is creating income, right? So like, Jeff, when I started to think about these things and I started doing my research, started putting the pieces of the puzzle together, I thought to myself, like, this seems like common sense to me. This doesn't seem very complicated. We use accumulation vehicles for accumulation. We use distribution vehicles for distribution. 401k for accumulation, annuities for distribution. And then we have our whole life insurance as our foundation, which is phenomenal for retirement as well. Great volatility buffer, great long-term care protection. You could get your dividends paid in cash for supplemental retirement income if you want. You have your death benefit, massive legacy play. So it actually gives you permission to spend, as Tom Wall said, and it's the name of his book. Right? When you have those things in place, you can actually spend your assets more freely to live the life that you want, because everything's already going to be replenished when you pass away because you have the death benefit. You don't have to worry about your spouse being taken care of and whether or not you're going to be able to pass enough assets off to him or her. You have the death benefit. You have guaranteed income for life. Is your 401k going to give you a 7% withdrawal rate guaranteed for life? Nope. No. And God forbid that you reach retirement and we hit a nasty downturn in the market and you're taking withdrawals from that. You don't have a volatility buffer. You don't have that guaranteed income. Good luck. That's all I can say. I hope that works out for you, but a lot of the times it doesn't. And like you said, Jeff, I think it puts it perfect. Those are the major gaps in people's plans. It's in their blind spot, because they're blindly following people like Dave Ramsey, or pick your favorite financial guru, and not asking these questions. Another question to ask would be, where are the gaps in my plan right now that I need to fill? And what is the best asset for that? All right. So I'll end it with that. Any thoughts on that? You're on mute.
Yep. Yeah, I want to put a couple numbers to this because you brought up some really good points. And the last annuity that we wrote, it was just under 200,000. It was about 195,000 that the client put in. It was giving them, I think, just under 16,000 a year of income, like 5,000 or 15,800 or something like that. So
It's
that's
roughly like
about
8%.
that's 8%.
8%. Yep.
So to get 16,000 out of your investment account, you do 16,000 divided by 4%. That's $400,000 to give you the safe withdrawal rate, which we talked about in other videos, but that is when you do actuarial um, science and you do, I'm blanking on the word, what's the word I'm looking for Monte Carlo simulations. When you do Monte Carlo simulations on taking various market ups and downs and, running maybe hundreds of different scenarios or thousands of scenarios, what percentage chance do I have of not running out of money? So the 4% rule is there because in most Monte Carlo situations, you have a 95% or greater chance of not running out of money. You know you're going to be good if you pull 4% every single year during the down years or in the up years, you should be able to make it through a 30-year retirement. So that's why we say 4% is because there's actual math, actual data behind that reason. So in
Right.
order to get 16,000 out of an account that's tied to the markets, you'd need $400,000 of principal in order to pull that. So right there, like you said, Matt, it's about 50%. It was actually a little bit less than 50% in this exact example,
And it's
195
not
to
guaranteed.
400,000.
It's not guaranteed for life either.
Exactly. And the annuity is there's a contractual guarantee with the annuity that the life insurance company will pay that out every single year until she passes away. And so that is a powerful thing because she knows for a fact there's certainty that comes with that number. She knows that money's coming in, and that's the whole part of a portfolio is having enough of the percentage that's right for you and your risk tolerance and your goals that's fixed income that the money's coming in with clockwork to cover your living and lifestyle. And some people are at a point that they can actually have enough money coming in above and beyond that they are guaranteed to be able to travel every year. They're
Yep.
guaranteed to be able to do the things that they want to do to enjoy life. Maybe they're guaranteed to drive a Mustang convertible because they've always wanted to. Like they're guaranteed to do it because the cash flow is coming in literally every single month or every single year, however you have it set up, to do what you want it to do. And there's no other, it's just like in the olden days, it was the pension. It was the greatest thing on planet Earth. And there's really not that too much that exists in our day and age now, but it can, the principles can be there with the annuity. Now, yes, you're giving up the capital, but you're not like giving up 100% of your assets to an annuity. You're doing a portion of it, 30, 40, 50%, whatever that number is right for you, that you're putting over to that for in exchange the guaranteed cash flow. Because
Right.
if you outlive your normal retirement age or even outlive your normal life expectancy and you're guaranteed that money, that's a lot better than, oh crap, my investment account ran out because I wasn't planning on living longer.
Right.
There's a lot of
Well,
people
and
that
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it's just a lot of people that live longer. I'm thinking back to my great grandmother. She lived to 105. She was near death at home. They took her to a nursing home, expected her to go in like a matter of months. She lived 16 freaking years in a nursing home to 105, but she was on obviously governmental assistance. It wasn't like she funded herself, but if you have a plan in place that is for the intangible things that you can't foresee, like if what happens if you outlived your money? Are you still taken care of? Well, with a plan like this and an annuity, you check that box. Yep, I'm good. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to go back to work at 80 years old and try to come up with an inflation adjusted amount of income that's way more than it was when I was actually working before I retired the first time. Like those are all things that you can plan for. So what was your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, there was just one point I wanted to make on what you said about like moving money in from like your portfolio or whatever into, an annuity and you don't have access to it anymore. But here's the question is why did you acquire everything in the portfolio in the first place? Well, it was to create income, was it not? Like we can be rich on paper, but if it doesn't pay our bills, what's the point? Right? So if the point of the 401k or tax qualified plans, portfolio, whatever, is so that we have enough money in retirement, that means we're going to have to sell off our assets to create income. That's the point of the assets. Okay. So if the point is to create income, not hold on to these assets for as long as I can. The point is to actually pay my bills and live my life and travel and all this stuff. We need income for that. Well, what's the best income vehicle to do that? Not a 401k. So move it's annuities. So moving the money from the portfolio to the annuity to create the income that you need. Well, you're already going to be creating income from the portfolio. Why not create the most amount of income in the most efficient way possible that's guaranteed for life? Why on earth would you not at least consider that? And because it's so efficient and you're going to get the same amount of income with half the money, you can, and because some people like being in the market, they like following it, whatever. Well, you can keep some of your money in the market. Like Jeff said, you don't have to move all your money into the annuity, but it's that paradigm shift, man. It's like, okay, well, the point of this is to create retirement income. So why wouldn't I use something that's going to create the most amount of income for me? I don't know, it's one of those things that was just kind of common sense when I asked that question and started going down that rabbit hole. It's like, well, why aren't we taught this? This is pretty basic stuff. And I think, we've talked about this, like having that in your plan during the accumulation phase, as opposed to being thrown in the game without any training whatsoever. You practice it, you study it first, so that when you're ready to hit retirement, when you're ready to get into that game, you're set, man. You're ready. You've got your game plan in place. You know exactly what you're going to do. There's no stress, no worries, no nothing. And you get guaranteed income for life. I don't know why anybody would not at least consider that. So,
yeah. Well, it makes me think I was having a conversation earlier with another Life 180 agent that and we were talking about like annuities and, if investments hit and, you came into a lot of money in the next couple of years, like what could you do with an annuity? And it made me think I've heard, I can't remember which professional football player it is, but it was a fairly prominent one that, got a massive contract, and they were interviewed by like Forbes or somebody they're like, how did you manage your money? And they're like, I just went out and bought a bunch of annuities with most of my money, or, a percentage of my money. They're like, it's clockwork money. I don't have to forfeit my principal. I don't have to worry about running out. That money's going to be working for me the rest of my life. I can do other investments and do other things with the other portion of my money that I didn't put in the annuity. But I've several times over taken care of my income. It's coming in every month. If I have a surplus, I can grow it after, a couple of years, and I can go put that into something else. Like you've got options. And so they're already thinking that way at, probably less than 30 years old. They're churning out annuities to take care of themselves after they're done playing professional sports, because they know they're not going to do that forever. And they're being really smart about that, because they're knowing that they're putting money efficiently into something that's going to give them income. And that's what they need, is just income. And so that's just a great point. I was going to go back to the example that I gave of this client that, we put 195 in the annuity. We would have had to use 400,000 to get the same amount of cash flow. So if I could take 400,000 and I take 195 of that and put it into annuity, that means I've got 205,000 left to keep in the markets.
Yep.
Well, if we're getting a 7% rate of return, we know about every 10 years, based on the rule of 72, we're going to double our money. So in 10 more years, my 205 is going to be 410. I could do another annuity at that point with my growth, keep my 205. Now I've got $32,000 of income coming in. I've still got 200,000 that I can still play in the market. It's going to grow in another 10 years, double it roughly. I could keep playing that game. And by the time you got to retirement, maybe you're already close, maybe you've only got a decade or two left, but that's what you can do. You can play in both worlds. You can use the best instruments for growth and get the growth, and you can have the best instruments and the most efficient instruments for cash flow, producing cash flow. This isn't an either or. You have to pick one and you're only on the 401k camp or the annuity camp. It's how do you want to best leverage your money towards your goals? And there's a million combinations of what we're talking about. It could be gold, it could be Bitcoin, it could be, real estate, it could be buying businesses, it could be ATM machines. Like there's all kinds of things you can do to put your money to work that are exciting to you and they're in alignment with what you want to do. Do those things and then take care of the guaranteed part with the annuity. So you're good. And then you can go play with the rest. I know Matt Love calls it a play check, or Tom Hegnick calls it a play check. You got your paycheck and your play check. So those come in from annuities because they're so efficient and they can meet that need. And then you can go grow your money however else you want to, because you're much more certain. You can maybe take a little bit more risk with that other amount. In this case, 205,000. You could take a little bit more risk. Maybe you could push that maybe more towards 8 or 9% in the markets instead of 6 or 7, because you've got the checkbox covered of your income in retirement. You don't have to worry about it. So then
Yep.
maybe I've got more growth to play with, and I can maybe swing for the fences in a Bitcoin investment or something like that. And if it goes belly up, oh well, I'm still covered, in my bases, and I'm good. So yeah, those are kind of my final thoughts. Any closing thoughts you have, Matt, on this whole thing?
No, I think we've covered a lot. This stuff isn't rocket science, guys. You just got to start asking the right questions, man. Like, I'm not like some massive financial guru. I don't think like I know some secret that other people don't. Like this stuff is available. All you got to do is have some intention. Bring some intentionality back into your personal finances here. Just start asking some questions, start finding those gaps and identifying and researching these different tools that you can use to plug those gaps and watch your personal finances blossom. Of course, always focus on increasing income as well, but just start questioning things, man. That's what I would wrap up with. It just comes down to asking the right questions and making sure that we're doing what's best for us based on our specific goals.
Yep, perfectly said. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Yeah, I don't think I have any other closing thoughts other than make sure you're tuned into Matt's channel, Millennial Wealth Creator. He's got lots of great content over there talking about his journey and all the things he's doing with infinite banking and private money lending and anything else that you come up with that seems
Mhm.
like a great asset to use. So make sure you're subscribed to his channel, and make sure you're subscribed to mine as well if you haven't already done so, and click the notification bell so you know when we're coming out with more content like this. So thanks for joining me tonight, Matt. Always fun
Thanks for
to
having me.
chat this stuff with you, man. And we'll catch you guys later. Take care, everybody.
All right, man. See you next time.